Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on Facebook Live, YouTube, and Twitter. I am Bryson Carver. Loaded show we got for y'all today. NBA playoffs are in full effect. Another crazy Knicks-Hawks game last night. We have more negative fan interaction, which, it's amazing to have fans back in the arenas, but unfortunately, part of that means we've got some negative interactions between fans and players. I'm going to actually lead the show off with that. Clippers, man. They're at it again. Them darn Clippers. 5 straight playoff losses going back to last year. Of course, their 3-1 choke to the Denver Nuggets in the second round. I'll get into that. Also, Aaron Rodgers. Big interview with Kenny Mayne. Kenny Mayne's final SportsCenter show. Shout out to him. But he pretty much told you, here's my problem with the Green Bay Packers. He told y'all his issue with the Green Bay Packers. I'll get into all that later on the show. But first, as I promised, going to start with the negative fan interaction between players during the NBA playoffs. We had 2 last night. We've had 3 in the last 2 or 3 days. I think 3 days. 3 negative interactions in the last 3 days. 2 bad ones last night. The first one I saw was Russell Westbrook. Blowout loss to the Philadelphia 76ers in Game 2. Russ hurts his ankle. Okay, he's getting it checked out. He's going to the locker room with the Washington Wizards training staff. And some fan in the upper deck of the Wells Fargo Center in Philadelphia dumps popcorn on top of Russ's head. And thankfully, that fan has had his season tickets revoked. He is indefinitely banned from the arena, as he should. And then we saw, at least I saw this morning, you have you have Trae Young, who is now the new villain at the at the Garden, Madison Square Garden. It's very eerily similar to Reggie Miller back in the day, his old battles with Spike Lee on the sideline. It's not to that extent, but it's like Madison Square Garden has chosen their new enemy, and he happens to be Trae Young. And I never listen. If you would have told me before the season the Knicks are going to make the playoffs and get a first round, they get home court advantage in the first round, that in itself would have surprised me. But if you'd have told me that their new enemy of sorts, because Madison Square Garden, they like to choose their enemies, is going to be Trae Young, like not a very, I mean, he talks a lot. He talks his junk. If current NBA players have said, yeah, he's a trash talker. We're finally getting to see that on the national spotlight in the playoffs. But not a real, I would say, confrontational player is Trae Young. And he's going at it with the Garden, and the Garden's going at it with him. That's all fun and games until it's not. Until you have Trae Young walking by on the sidelines. You can actually see 50 Cent there. I think that might be Julianne Moore sitting 2 seats to the left of 50 Cent. Of course, the stars are out in New York. Spike Lee, of course, is there. And a couple of rows up behind the floor seats, some idiot spits in the direction of Trae Young. And so he, by the way, has been banned from Madison Square Garden, as he should. And so it's like, here's my main takeaway. We've seen these negative interactions in the past. We've seen it in Utah. We've seen it in Boston, and I'll get into Boston specifically in just a second. But we've seen these negative fan interactions with players, and it sucks because we're starting to see like arenas like legit look full. Like, did you see Utah last night? Utah looked like it had a full arena. I know they said it wasn't completely full capacity. I didn't see many empty seats last night. I definitely don't see many empty seats at Madison Square Garden. It feels normal. It feels great. Just about all the fans there are vaccinated, so that's why they're able to have so many in. And so it's great. It's loud. It's playoff atmosphere. Here we go. It feels, it's so much better than last year at the Bubble, right? Where it's an empty gym in the middle of Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida. No, these are NBA arenas, playoffs, just in time. We got a legit number of fans into where the teams actually have home court advantage. And I got to admit, I was dead wrong on this. Like a few months ago when I was saying, Utah was playing well and it looked like they were on their way to the number 1 seed, which of course they are now in the Western Conference, and the Lakers were kind of struggling. I was like, if the Lakers meet the Jazz, it's not going to make a difference who's got home court advantage, because by this point there'll be fans, but it won't be a legit home court advantage. Oh no, it has been. Utah's got home court advantage. So does New York. Even LA, the Lakers are scheduled to have about 6,000 to 9,000, somewhere in between, number of fans in the Staples Center tonight, which is great. But when you have all these fans coming back in, of course, you're going to have your jerks, your people that do not deserve to sit in an arena during an NBA playoff game because of clearly their behavior. I saw the third incident I talked about earlier. Denver, Portland. Obviously, Carmelo Anthony started his career in Denver. Eventually, he says, I want to be traded to New York. He gets his wish. He's traded to New York, and Nuggets fans hate him. And Melo's walking to the locker room after the game's over. Portland loses game 2 to Denver. Melo's walking to the locker room, and some of the fans near the tunnel are calling him every word in the book. And so I sit back and I say, what if those fans, if they saw Carmelo Anthony out in the streets, I wonder if they're going to call him every insult known to man. I highly doubt it. I wonder if this fan in Philadelphia saw Russell Westbrook out in the streets. What if he's going to dump popcorn or any other type of food on top of his head? I don't think he'd do that. Trae Young. Which to me, this is the worst one, because listen, getting food dumped on you is insulting, it's degrading, it's disrespectful, it's everything. But spitting is a whole nother thing, because what you are telling that individual that you are spitting in the direction of, you are saying, I think higher of the dirt on the ground than I think of you. Right? Because we occasionally spit off into the ground, right? You don't ever spit in the direction of a human being. That is the number one most disrespectful thing you can do to anybody, is spit at them. And that's what that fan in the Madison Square Garden did to Trae Young. And so it's disappointing for many reasons. But mainly, I think for me, the way I look at it from this perspective the most, two things. Number one is with players, if the shoe's on the other foot, and let's say a fan says something to a player, or I don't know, does something, and a player say he's got a Gatorade in his hand, right? He's getting hydrated on the sideline, and let's say the player throws the Gatorade at the fan. Oh, that player's getting fined. He's getting suspended. He ain't playing the rest of the playoffs. He's probably going to be gone for the rest of the play. I mean, depending on how, if it's a superstar player throwing it, he'll get suspended, he'll get fined, probably won't be for the rest of the playoffs. But say if it's just a guy who occasionally comes off the bench, is not guaranteed any playing time, and he throws a bottle of Gatorade or a water or whatever they drink on the sideline, they throw it at the direction of the fans. Oh my goodness, Adam Silver's going to go full David Stern on them, right? David Stern, God rest his soul, was the ultimate disciplinarian commissioner, right? And Adam Silver is not that. Like that's not really his reputation. That's not really what he does. But Adam Silver is going to say, okay, this cannot happen in our league, right? And so that player is going to be humiliated. He's going to be talked about on every sports talk show, heck, non-sports talk shows, like, oh, this jerk, he's disrespecting a fan like that and throwing water at him or attacking him. We probably won't know very much about the fan, or the fans, unfortunately plural, that did this to Russ, that did this to Trae Young and Carmelo Anthony to a lesser degree. That's what I'm saying. Like, we probably don't know their Instagram account, their Twitter, Facebook, whatever social media they use, unless someone digs it up. And listen, you can find anything on the internet, right? So maybe someone does. But here's what I want to see. I want to see these people's faces. I want to see the people that were real big and tough in the protection of being a fan, in the protection of being at an arena, and being able to say, you know what? I can dump food on top of Russell Westbrook's head, and he's not going to be able to fight back. It's real big and tough of you, right? Right? No, what it is it's the ultimate sign of a coward. That's what it is. That's what it is. And in the case of the fan at the Garden, spitting. I mean, again, nothing's more disrespectful. You can't do anything more disrespectful to another human being than to spit at them. Point blank. And that's what this fan did to Trae Young. And, we're probably not going to find out much. If the shoe's in the other foot, oh my goodness, can you imagine the reaction? Can you imagine? It goes back to, and I'll get into my second reason, second big reason. There's many reasons I'm outraged by this. And, anybody who loves the game of basketball or just has any respect for human beings should be outraged by this. But there's two big reasons. That's kind of the first one, and I'll close it with this. Remember when Kyle Lowry, it's during the 2019 finals, Golden State versus Toronto, and a ball's going out of bounds toward the floor seats, toward the sideline courtside seats. Kyle Lowry is trying to save it, and he's not able to. He goes into the fans, and so he's making sure they're okay. They're making sure he's okay. Okay, no harm, no foul. And all of a sudden, what turned out to be a co-owner, a minority owner of the Golden State Warriors by the name of Mark Stevens, let's call him out by his name, shoved Kyle Lowry, and according to Kyle, said things that he can't repeat. Okay? And so if Kyle retaliates, which, by the way, who would blame him? If you get shoved, yeah, but if you did absolutely nothing, you're just going about your own business, make sure everybody's all right, and all of a sudden someone shoves you and is calling you everything, I'm going to be a little ticked off. That's just me personally. I think most people will be kind of ticked off by that. And so it kind of goes to the double standard a little bit. And let's call it the way it is. I don't think you can sit here and say that race doesn't play into this. You said, listen, you saw what Kyrie Irving said about Boston. Heck, you saw what a Celtics player, a guy who has been with the Celtics, this is his 6th year there, Marcus Smart, fan favorite in Boston. Like, the fans love him. I occasionally love watching Marcus Smart when he's not flopping like crazy, but hey, he's a great defensive player, knocks down, 3-point shots. He's a good player. But even he agreed with Kyrie, and he's a Celtics player that, yeah, we got to deal with some crap with some fans. We all know, Adam Jones with the Baltimore Orioles back in 2017, right? He said he was called, the N-word by Red Sox fans there. And I'm not just using this to bang on Boston fans. I'm a Red Sox fan myself. I love the Red Sox, but it's like this kind of stuff we see with fans. They think if they buy a seat, if they buy a ticket, they go to see a game, that just gives them the right to do anything they want. And what it also shows is it's the ultimate, these people on, it's kind of Twitter trolls, right? It's Twitter trolls, but they're actually there in front of you. In that they're going to take a shot at you. They may give you the ultimate sign of disrespect that one human being can show to another. And they know you can't fight back. Because they're protected, whether it's because they're in the seats, whether it's because the player knows if I do fight back, malice of the palace, which, by the way, listen, Ron Artest, Steven Jackson, they all went too far. Everybody went too far with that. But do you blame Ron Artest for fighting back? Do you blame Steven Jackson for fighting back when fans are throwing stuff at you? And it was a horrible look for the NBA. I get it. Of course. But when the fans are throwing drinks at, throwing beer at you, throwing food, do you really blame them for going into the stands? In 2004, I believe it was, the Malice at the Palace, arguably the worst night in NBA history, right? And so all I'm saying is I completely, unequivocally, 1,000% side with the players here, and that something's got to be done about this. The second reason, a little shorter, why this bothers me is because it gives, we all know the majority of NBA fans are great, right? And by the way, guys, fans trash talking players, oh, you suck, Kevin Durant, or you can't, you're not clutch LeBron James. That's just, it's trash talk. Players like that, actually. They said they missed that, right? So that there's no issue with that. But when you think about the fans around the world, and I'll just talk specifically about fans here in the United States, who blue collar people save their money just to go take their kids to go see an NBA game, and you have people like this. The guy who tossed popcorn on Russell Westbrook is a season ticket holder in Philadelphia, and he's got the privilege of getting to go to 76ers game anytime they're playing at home. And that's how he abuses his privilege. So it sucks to see. The NBA, the Knicks, who else? The 76ers, they have addressed they've obviously banned these guys from the arena for life, as they should. These guys should never be allowed to go to an NBA game the rest of their life. The rest of their life. Because if this is how you're going to behave, and this is how you're going to treat the players. Okay? I know they make $1 million. That don't mean you disrespect them at games. Come on, man. So this just sucks to see. I hate leading my show off with stuff like this, but when you see players getting disrespected like this, it's like, man, this is messed up. So don't blame Russ for the way he reacted. I'd react the exact same way. And it didn't look like Trae Young even saw what happened with a fan spitting in his direction. But it just sucks to see, and these guys got the punishment they deserve. So a little lighter-hearted subject, sticking with the NBA playoffs. Let's talk about those good old Los Angeles Clippers. Now, this is a team that a year ago actually happened to be the very first episode of Carving It Up. October the 21st of 2019, very first episode of this show. We were just a podcast only back then. And it was the day before the 2019-20 NBA season started. And I predicted that the Los Angeles Clippers would win the NBA Finals in 2020. Now, of course, there was a lot of things happen. They had a good regular season, right? And, of course, the pandemic happens. There's no sports at all for 4 months. And then they come back in a bubble. And I still hold to, I still think the Clippers are going to win the championship. Okay? They barely survived Dallas in the first round. They got a couple breaks with Dallas, with Porzingis getting hurt and ejected in game 1. And other things went their way. They beat Dallas in 6 games. Okay, they go to the second round against the Denver Nuggets. They take a 3-1 lead in a all LA Western Conference Finals. Lakers Clippers seems inevitable. Both teams have a 3-1 lead over, in the Lakers case, the Houston Rockets, and in the Clippers case, the Denver Nuggets. The difference is, as we all know, the Lakers took care of Houston in Game 5, and the Clippers went on to lose Game 5, after having a double-digit lead. They lost Game 6 after holding a double-digit lead, and they lost Game 7. You guessed it, after holding a double-digit lead. And so the next day, it wasn't the next day, it was my next show. I said, you know what? I'm out on the Clippers. I don't care what they could bring in. LeBron, they could bring in everybody. Heck, they could go back in time and bring Michael Jordan, for crying out loud. And I'd still say I'm done with the Clippers. I'm out on them. Because you had guys after that Game 7 loss to Denver, saying, this wasn't really a championship or bust season. It didn't really mean that. It wasn't. That's not really how we were. Well, that's easy for you to say now that your season's over. And so I sold my stock in the Clippers after that Game 7 loss. I was out on them. And it's perfect. It is just perfect. The Clippers go into their final 2 games of the regular season. Who's on their schedule? The Oklahoma City Thunder, who won 1 game in their last, I believe it was 23-24 games. In OKC's last 23-24 games, they won 1 game. They were bad. And their final game, the Clippers finished with OKC. Before that, they played Houston, who had the worst record in all the association. Okay? So basically the Clippers finished with the 2 worst teams in the NBA. Now, at that point, the Lakers were not they were not etched in the play-in game as the 7th seed. They still had a shot to be the 6th seed in the playoffs and avoid the play-in tournament. Knowing this, the Clippers, knowing that if they're the 3 seed, there's a possibility they match up with the Lakers in the first round. So what do? They sit all their stars, all their best players, Kawhi, Paul George, Rondo, they seed everybody. They lose those final 2 games. They fall to the 4 seed. Lakers don't even get the 6 seed. So they had avoided them, and the Clippers would have avoided the Lakers in the first round anyway. And they're the 4 seed. And here comes this team named the Dallas Mavericks, led by Luka Doncic, one of the certainly the best young player in the NBA. I don't consider Giannis that young anymore. Certainly the best young player in the NBA. He's gonna be one of the greatest. When it's all said and done, Luka's gonna be one of the greatest scorers in the history of the game, as long as Lord willing he stays healthy. So this Dallas team comes in. They're like, hold on. Porzingis basically missed half the series last year. Our second best player basically missed half the series last year, and we still took them 6 games. And they're just going to tank their last 2 because they think we're going to be a breeze in the first round. We're just going to take care of Dallas, probably 4 or 5 games, and move on to our next opponent, which would be, let's see, if this is the 4th seed, they'd either play the Utah Jazz or the Memphis Grizzlies. By the way, I think Memphis is going to win this series. But saying all that to say this, the Clippers are in a close game in game 1, and it slips out of their hands. Dallas wins. The other night, Tuesday, big home game. This is a big one, man. You've already lost home court advantage. You cannot go down 2-0 before you head out on the road for games 3 and 4 in Dallas. And it's a close game. 4th quarter. Kawhi dropped 30 in the first half. He was balling. And Kawhi and Paul George disappeared, per usual, as they've done with the Los Angeles Clippers. And so I think it's just perfect. I'm going to say it out here point blank. This team does not have championship heart. It's as simple as that. Because if you believe, because the Clippers, on paper, nobody would deny. Heck, Lakers fans wouldn't deny. On paper, Clippers got a championship roster. You got Kawhi Leonard, 2-time champion, 2-time finals MVP. You got Paul George, who a couple of years ago was in the MVP conversation and is a multiple-time All-Star. You've got Rajon Rondo. All he's done is won a ring with the 2 most iconic brands in the NBA, the Lakers and the Celtics. Okay? You've got a championship-winning head coach in Ty Lue. Okay? You've got a good, solid roster around you. On paper is why I predicted them to win the championship last year. And I went down with that ship. Man. That ship, man, it didn't just sink, it exploded, man. Man, it was bad. If you think you can win the finals and bring a championship to LA for the team in the basement, why are you tanking your last 2 games to avoid the Lakers? I thought you're not scared of the Lakers. I thought you think you constructed this team to beat the Lakers, and specifically LeBron, because you've got a team full of great defensive wings, Kawhi, PG, right? Morris, guys that can give LeBron some trouble. You constructed your team to beat him. And you're avoiding him in the first round? You're trying to avoid him as long as you possibly can? That tells me that LeBron, Anthony Davis, the Lakers as a whole are living rent-free in the Clippers' heads, as they have really their entire existence as an NBA franchise. So, me personally, look, I picked the Clippers to win the series in 6 games. Now, to do that, they'd have to win out the rest of the series. And I'm not saying that's impossible. You know, it's not. I think at this point for the Clippers to win, it'd have to go 7. And if it goes to a game 7, man, all the pressure's on the Clippers. We saw what happened in the last time they were in a game 7 against the Nuggets, and they fell flat on their face. And you got a guy in Luka who straight up ain't scared of the Lakers. I keep saying the Lakers, the Clippers. Luka Doncic is not scared of the Clippers. Okay? You look at the numbers he's put up against these guys. He even hit a buzzer beater to win it in game 4 last year in the first round to beat the Clippers and tie the series up. Luke ain't scared of the Clippers. The whole Mavericks team, whether it's Porzingis, whether it's Hardaway, whether it's Finney-Smith or Jalen Brunson, who I like a lot out of Villanova, whether it's a championship head coach and Rick Carlisle, none of them fear the Clippers. Because they're like, why should we? We were depleted last year and took you 6 games. Okay? And you ain't done nothing. Your franchise has never been to a conference finals. For context, one of the most long-suffering franchises in the NBA, one of the most ridiculed franchises in the NBA, the Minnesota Timberwolves, they've been to a conference finals. And the Clippers have never even done that. The closest they've gotten to the conference finals happened in 2015 and 2015 and 2020 respectively. And what happened in both instances? They had a 3-1 lead and lost the series in 7. So I love this. I picked the Clippers to win the series, but to be honest with you, I won't really care if they lose. I do want a Lakers-Clippers conference finals just for the Lakers, and I don't like the Lakers. I'm a Warriors fan. I don't like the Lakers. I don't like the Clippers either. But I just want to see the Lakers dismantle the Clippers. I genuinely do. But it might be better for the Clippers to tank their last 2 games against the 2 worst teams in the NBA so they could face Dallas, a quote-unquote easier opponent, and wind up losing the series. That would be perfect. This team does not have championship mentality. They don't have championship will. Hey, if you think you can win the championship, that means you can beat anybody. Because the champions are the last team standing. They can beat anybody, right? Clippers clearly don't have that mentality. So I love to see this. I personally I have a joy watching the way the series is playing out. And I'm genuinely rooting for Dallas the rest of the way. I wouldn't guarantee. I'm still not to the point where I guarantee a Mavericks win. I guess I'll go down with the Clippers in 6 chip. But will I be heartbroken? Will I be heartbroken if the Clippers lose? Of course not. Of course not. I'll love it. I'll love it. I'll celebrate. Because you want to talk about the ultimate pretenders for a championship. The LA Clippers are a perfect example. So shifting from the team in the basement at the Staples Center, who, by the way, I think they're moving out to the old Forum where the Lakers used to play. So sorry about that, Lakers fans. But let me shift a little bit. I'm gonna get back to the NBA playoffs. John Morant, Hawks versus Knicks. Lakers got a big game tonight, Game 3 against the Phoenix Suns. I'm going to talk about Aaron Rodgers for just a second. Now, Monday night, Kenny Mayne, Final Sports Center. Shout out Kenny Mayne, one of the best Sports Center anchors of all time. He's going out, so he's interviewing like his favorite athletes. I think he had Sue Bird on there. He may have had Russell Wilson on there if I'm not mistaken. Aaron Rodgers was one of those athletes that he had on there. He's been friends with him for years. So Aaron Rodgers comes on the show, and you see Aaron. He's chilling in Hawaii right now with his fiance, and they're just living their best life right now. And so Aaron takes the time out of his day to pay tribute to his good buddy who's retiring. I don't know if he's retiring or just leaving ESPN, leaving Sports Center. And he's obviously trying to shit the conversation to Kenny, and Kenny just wants to say, hey, dude, bro, are you out of Green Bay, or have you requested a trade? Is this all smokescreen? Like, what is this? This is like what Russell Wilson did, like using your leverage to say, hey, I want out of Seattle just to get your way to be able to get the help you need, which I commended Russell Wilson for doing that on the show. I say, hey, that's genius. You're the best player in the history of the Seahawks franchise. Use your leverage. You've said go Hawks for 9 years. Use some leverage. And that's what Russ did, and I commend him for it. He's actually done that twice. Did it back in 2018 with in contract negotiations, and he won. Good for Russ. So Kenny's like, hey, Aaron, is this kind of like that? Or like, are you dead serious? You have requested a trade out of Green Bay. And Aaron didn't say yes. He didn't say no. He basically, I'm paraphrasing, said, it's about a philosophy. He said, I like Jordan Love. He said, I liked working with Jordan Love. He said, I love my coaches, love my teammates, love the fans of Green Bay, who for some reason are anti-Aaron Rodgers now, which makes zero sense to me, but I don't know. I can't get in the mind of a cheesehead. But he's saying, hey, I love Green Bay. Love the fans. Love the coaches, teammates. He said it's about a philosophy. It's about the people. That is, in a sense, saying, front office, you got a decision to make. Fire the general manager, Brian Gutekunst, who has been awful, has had 2 horrendous. He's had 1 good draft pick in 2 drafts. Amari Rodgers out of Clemson, a guy who I think might be successful in the NFL. That's a might. That's not like a Trevor Lawrence, right? You're not getting a Kyle Pitts, like a home run hit in the draft. He could be good. I think Amari Rodgers will be good in the NFL. He's had 1 good draft pick in his last 2 drafts. And coming off an NFC Championship game appearance when it is clear as day that what the Packers need is more help on the outside. Because we've seen with the Packers, it's obviously everybody said, well, you got Devontae Adams, one of the 3 best receivers in football. You do. But would you take, if you're a quarterback in the NFL, would you take a top 3 receiver and a bunch of guys? Or would you take, say, Tampa Bay, for example, right? Like Mike Evans is great, but you've got Godwin, you've got Scotty Miller, you've got Antonio Brown, you've got Gronk, you've got Cameron Brate, OJ Howard's coming back from injury. Like a bunch of really, really good 2 great players instead of just 1 amazing player and a bunch of guys. Because we saw, what did the Tampa Bay Buccaneers do in the NFC Championship game against the Packers? They said, Devont, if somebody else, if it's Kumaro, if it's Valdez-Scantling, we are not going to let Devontae Adams beat us. We're not. And they did a good job on Devontae all game. And Aaron had nobody else to go to. So that, in a sense, exposed what was wrong with the Packers and what Aaron was trying to tell the Packers. He's like, look, Devontae's amazing. He's unbelievable. But it can't just be a one-man show on the receiving corps. I need other guys. And what did they do last year in the draft? They take a quarterback. Now, how did you think Aaron Rodgers was going to respond to that? How do you think he's going to respond to that? He's like, you know what? We need receivers. Our defense is pretty good, right? Our running game is really good. By the way, speaking of that running game's really good. Aaron Jones, great offensive line. What do they do in the second round? They take a running back, A.J. Dillon. No disrespect to A.J. Dillon. No disrespect to Jordan Love. But Green Bay didn't need those 2 guys. And what did the Green Bay Packers do the day Aaron Rodgers requests a trade because he can't get any help? What do? They draft a cornerback. They draft a corner in the first round. Simply put, they say they believe what Jerry Krause believed in the 90s with the Bulls. And Jerry Krause was one of the greatest general managers of all time. He put a great Bulls team together. I don't know if he drafted Jordan, but he drafted Scottie Pippen, right? They got Dennis Rodman in free agency when nobody wanted him, right? He drafted all these great players. But he said organizations win championships. And Jordan's like, heck with that. Players and coaches win championships. Organizations play a role, but they're not the main catalyst. In New England, when they were winning all those Super Bowls, was anybody talking about how Robert Kraft deserves the most credit? No, they were talking about Brady, and they were talking about Belichick. And depending on what Super Bowl it was, on the defensive side, early in the Patriots dynasty, it was Teddy Bruschi, it was Willie McGinnis, it was Ty Law. It was Deion Branch who won the MVP of one of those early Super Bowls against the Eagles. And in the second half of the dynasty, it was guys like Julian Edelman. It was guys like Dante Hightower. Player. In the case of Belichick, coach. So that's what Aaron is trying to get to Green Bay. He's like, listen, you can put the roster together, but at the end of the day, it's the players and coaches got to get those W's. And so what he is saying, like, y'all don't get it. Y'all really don't get the one time you put help around me. The one time you did that. 2010. Oh, I won the Super Bowl and won Super Bowl MVP. We had a great defense. We had really good receivers, Greg Jennings, Jordy Nelson, Donald Driver, right? Good offensive line. Oh, what do you know? We won the Super Bowl, So that's what he's saying. And I don't blame Aaron. And I've not necessarily been the biggest Aaron fan when it comes to how he's handled certain situations. But in this one, I'm like, when he looks at Tampa Bay and how they treat Brady, and he looks at Kansas City and how they treat Mahomes, and he looks at Buffalo and how they treat Josh Allen, Baltimore and Lamar Jackson, heck, Cleveland with Baker Mayfield. No disrespect to Baker, but Aaron's a lot better than Baker Mayfield. I don't blame him for being ticked off. I really don't. So I don't believe he's going to be a Green Bay Packer week 1. If he is, listen, if you're a Green Bay Packers fan, I'm sorry, but get ready for either Blake Bortles or Jordan Love against the New Orleans Saints. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. Like, I don't really blame Aaron Rodgers when he looks at other quarterbacks the way they're treated. In another sport, my team, the Golden State Warriors, Bob Myers, the general manager, is an amazing general manager. They're asking about how are you going to construct a team to being a champion again? You know what his answer was? We owe it to Steph Curry to build a great roster around him. We owe him. Why? Because Steph Curry is one of the greatest, he's the greatest Golden State Warrior of all time, no debate, right? Greatest shooter ever, top 3 player in the world, okay? He's won 3 championships, he's won 2 MVPs, one of them unanimous. Golden State was valued at about $350 million when Steph was drafted. I think they're valued at pretty well into the billions now. They're one of the most valuable sports franchises in all the world. That's because of Steph more than anybody. And so Bob Myers said, we owe Steph. He's on the back end of his prime. We need to help the guy. We need to help the guy win some more rings. Boy, I wish the Green Bay Packers had that same mentality if I'm Aaron Rodgers. Because he says, I'm the greatest quarterback in your history. By the way, for a franchise that had Bart Starr, who won 2 Super Bowls, Brett Favre, who won 1 Super Bowl, 3 MVPs, got him to the playoffs year in and year out. And Aaron says, I'm the best of these 3 guys. Like, why don't y'all treat me the same as every other star quarterback gets treated? If you are great at something and you see other people who are obviously great, Brady, Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar, great quarterbacks, but you believe you're the best, and you certainly have an argument to, heck, you're the MVP, you're the reigning MVP, you had the best season. And you see how they're getting treated by their organizations and how you're getting treated by your organization. Again, he's got every right to be ticked off after 16 years with this franchise. I'm really fascinated to see who he's going to get traded to. I'm telling you, he is not going to be a Green Bay Packer in week 1 because, listen, Michael Irvin said it best. Michael Irvin said it best. I think it was during the NFL schedule reveal show at the SoFi Stadium, NFL Network. I watched the whole thing. It was great. And Michael Irvin, they were talking about Aaron Rodgers. Irv said, this guy holds a grudge against his own family. And the Packers think they're going to convince him to come back? That ain't going to happen. So there you go. That's my latest thoughts on Aaron Rodgers. Certainly a telling interview with Kenny Mayne. So let's get back to the NBA playoffs. Ja Morant. In the words of the great J. Cole, Ja Morant, I'm on my Grizzly. Right? My goodness. 47 points. The Grizzlies offensively were unbelievable. They were absolutely unbelievable. I mean, come on. They scored 129 points. The problem, though, was the Jazz were even more unbelievable on offense. The final score, 141 to 129. Defense was not, let's put it this way, defense was at a premium yesterday. But Ja Morant, obviously a career playoff high. It's only a second playoff game ever. Of course, it's his career high in the playoffs. Ja Morant, 47 points, 15 for 26 from the field, 2 for 7 for the three-point line, which for him, he's a below-average three-point shooter. That's pretty good. 2 for 7, you'll take that. But he was efficient. He played high minutes last night, played 43 minutes, and dropped 47 on one of the best defensive teams in the NBA, the Utah Jazz. Now, I've been a proponent of, I said last week, because I thought my Golden State Warriors were going to beat Memphis in the elimination game for the play-in tournament. They, of course, did not. It still hurts. But the point is, Memphis won. But beforehand, I said I think Golden State's going to beat Memphis, and I think they're going to beat Utah in 7 games. Obviously, I was wrong on Golden State winning that game against the Grizzlies. But I'm going to stick to my 8 seed winning in 7 games. I think Memphis is going to upset Utah. They're too Donovan Mitchell reliant. They're deep. Joe Ingles, Jordan Clarkson, Royce O'Neal, Gobert, Mike Conley. They're a deep basketball team. But when you talk about guys that have that dog in them, Ja Morant has that. Dylan Brooks definitely has that. Valanciunas, it comes and goes. Jaren Jackson, I think, has that. Whereas in Utah, I think Donovan Mitchell is the only one that has that. Rudy, he's struggled in the playoffs. Mike Conley's mostly been injured, but Mike Conley doesn't have a great playoff resume, and I love Mike Conley. I was so happy for Mike Conley when he finally made the All-Star game this year. I think it was long overdue. I love Mike. But his postseason resume isn't great. Jordan Clarkson, what's he done in the postseason? Joe Ingles. So I think Memphis is going to win this series, but we are seeing a superstar develop, and I got to call myself out on this. Zion Williamson, guy I love. I love Zion. How could you not love Zion, right? He's fun. He's energetic. He's got all kinds of highlight plays. His stats are crazy after every game. He's incredibly efficient. He's a monster down low. He's a great player. But I came out on the show. I said, I think Zion is going to be the next LeBron James. Okay? He's got the hype. He had the hype around him. But he's putting up numbers. I talked about this a couple months ago on my show. He's putting up numbers that are not just similar to LeBron's rookie numbers or numbers in his first 2 years, but they have actually eclipsed them as far as points, rebounds. So it's like, oh, okay, this dude is for real. But Ja Morant, same draft class. Zion Williamson in 2019 goes number 1 overall to the Pelicans. Ja Morant goes 2nd overall to the Memphis Grizzlies. Zion in 2 years in New Orleans. They missed the playoffs both years. Ja Morant. And by the way, real quick, the Pelicans don't have a bad roster. I mean, they don't. I love Zion, but we got to be honest here. They got Lonzo. They got Brandon Ingram, who's an all-star. They got Steven Adams. Eric Bledsoe. That's a good roster. It's not a championship roster, but it's a team that you'd expect to get to the playoffs. And they haven't done that. Whereas on the other hand, Ja Morant, the Grizzlies are in the play-in game last year against Portland, and it slips away. Portland ends up winning. They get the 8th seed, but the Memphis Grizzlies barely missed the playoffs last year. And this year, they beat San Antonio in the first play-in game, and they go on the road and beat Golden State to get in the playoffs. Ja Morant has done more in his first 2 years than Zion Williamson, and I love Zion. But he hasn't done in his first 2 years what Ja has done. And so I got to give credit where credit's due to Ja Morant. He's been playing great. Going back to he played against Golden State the last game of the regular season. The winner got the 8th seed in the play-in tournament, and he didn't play well. He was great against San Antonio. He was amazing against Golden State in the second play-in game. And so far in the series against Utah, he's been special. We are seeing a star blossom before our very eyes. So this is great to see the next generation of the NBA coming up, and it's certainly in good hands. So big shout out Ja Morant. Now, Knicks Hawks. Woo! I said Knicks in 5 before the series started. I'm probably not gonna be right on that one. I don't think the Knicks are gonna win 3 straight. But this has been a great series so far. This could probably end up being the best series of the first round because you've got an Atlanta team that after they switched head coaches, they fired Lloyd Pierce. Nate McMillan steps in. Nate McMillan, I'll say it. I've said it a million times. I'll say it again. Should have never been fired last year by the Indiana Pacers. We see what Indiana was this year. They missed the playoffs. But Nate McMillan steps in, and the Hawks go 27-10 down the stretch. Trae Young plays great. They add Lou Williams. They got Bogdanovich. They've got good veteran players mixed with good young players. John Collins, Kevin Huerter. Like that's the ideal playoff team you want. Well coached. They've got really good young players, and they got smart, nifty veterans. That's what you want in the postseason, and that's what normally wins. And then you look at this Knicks team, which has Julius Randle, right? All-star, runaway most improved player. But then you've got guys like Derrick Rose, who's playing amazing in this series. He's been the best Knick this series. He's been outstanding. You got Alec Burks. Where was that in Utah, right? When he was with the Jazz. He's playing great in this series. Okay, you look at guys like Reggie Bullock, right? Making big shots. So you've got Nerlens Noel. You've got Taj Gibson. RJ Barrett, give him his credit. We talk about the 2019 draft. RJ Barrett was the third pick. He's playing great. Like Obi Toppin. I mean, it's a bunch of guys. You're like, how did this team get to the 4th seed? Tom Thibodeau, fired twice. Chicago, Minnesota. And I think he's the coach of the year. I think he's going to win coach of the year. So the Knicks are like the perfect Cinderella story of the NBA. You've got a bunch of likable players, right? They got an all-star, Julius Randle, but if you looked at the Knicks before the season, heck, I didn't have the Knicks making the playoffs. I mean, what reason did I have to say that was going to happen? And not only did they make the playoffs, but they were the 4 seed. And they're locked in a tough, it's tied 1-1. Knicks got a big win last night. Julius Randle, once again, did not play well, but he came up big down the stretch, making some big plays. And then on the other end, you got Trae Young, who plays outstanding in game 1. He hit 2 clutch free throws to give the Hawks the lead at the end of game 1. Knicks tie it, and what does Trae Young do? He hits the floater with 9/10 of a second left to win the game. He's trash-talking the Knicks fans, and then in response in game 2, the Knicks fans are making fun of his hair and chanting all this stuff, and Trae Young goes out there and balls again. And so now the series is shifting to Atlanta. I think this is going to split. I think the Hawks are going to win game 3. Knicks will win game 4, and we'll basically at that point have a best of 3 from game 5 on. So I love this. I love that it's, we've got our name brand players, right? We got LeBron James. We got Kevin Durant. We got, Giannis. We've got the best players in basketball, right? Who are all in championship contention. This is the worst conference finals the NBA could have if it were Hawks Knicks, because it's like, man, where's the superstars? Where's the guys, the faces of the NBA? But for a first-round series, sign me up. Sign me up. You've got 2 teams who do not have championship expectations. Neither of these teams are going to win the finals. Whoever wins this series is going to get beaten by the who's the 1 seed? Philadelphia. They're going to get beat by Philadelphia in the second round. But these are 2 great stories. These are organizations that are ascending. They've drafted well. They're well coached. This is great. This is great first-round NBA basketball. So looking forward to seeing how it played out. Again, I picked Knicks in 5 before the season or the series started, but I would love it if it went 7. Can you imagine a game 7 at Madison Square Garden? Again, sign me up. So this is going to be fun. Now, final topic of the show, big game 3 tonight, Lakers-Suns. Lakers got a huge game 2 win as the series shifts back to Los Angeles at the Staples Center for games 3 and 4. Game 3 is tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. But this, to me, is a must-win for the Lakers. And I again, just like I did with my Super Bowl prediction, which I ended up being right on, my preseason Super Bowl prediction, I said Bucks are going to beat the Chiefs in Super Bowl 55. It was looking a little shaky at midseason. The Bucks had lost a couple games in a row. I said, you know what? I'm going to go down with the ship. And it paid off. So that's what I'm going to do right now. We're going to see Lakers, Nets in the NBA Finals. By the way, the Nets are crushing the Celtics. I had the Nets in a sweep, but I mean, this is embarrassing for Boston. Katie's balling. Joe Harris had a great game too. James Harden, Blake Griffin's dunk on everybody again. Kyrie. I mean, it's nothing but Nets right now in Brooklyn. But back to the Lakers. I think this is a big game for them because you've got home court advantage now. You've got it. Not the best player, the most valuable player on the other team, Chris Paul, is hurt once again in the playoffs. Now it's his shoulder. Okay. You barely survived game 2. Right? Cameron Payne had an excellent game. Right? You got Jay Crowder in foul trouble early. Anthony Davis had his best game that he's had in a long time. In a big, meaningful game, that's the best Anthony Davis has played in a while. LeBron was really good. Andre Drummond and Dennis Schroeder were excellent. And it came down to the last minute. Now, you are at home now. A couple days to get healthy. The comfort of the Staples Center, obviously. I do think if Phoenix wins game 3 tonight, I think the series is going to go to 7. Going to go to game 7. I picked Lakers in 6 before the series started. But if Phoenix wins tonight, I think it's going 7. If the Lakers win tonight, I would pick them to win game 4 as well. Phoenix probably wins game 5. It goes to game 6. Lakers close them out. But point blank, I'm just going to go and say it. If Lakers win tonight, I think they'll have an opportunity to close them out in game 5 in Phoenix. If Phoenix wins tonight, game 3, I think it is going to go eventually to a game 7. So it's been a really, really interesting series thus far. AD played terribly in game 1. LeBron was not great himself. Heck, none of the Lakers were. And then game 2, Anthony Davis is phenomenal, 34 points. Andre Drummond with the double-double. LeBron hit a big 3 that closed the game out. Schroeder was excellent. Probably his best game as a Laker. And it still was tight towards the end with Chris Paul very limited. So that would be my cause for concern if I'm a Lakers fan. I do believe they'll win the series. I think they'll get it done in 6. But this is a big game 3 tonight. Make no mistake about it. So with that is all the time we have for today's show. Thank you all so much for stopping by. Be sure to catch Carving It Up tomorrow. As always, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time on Facebook Live, YouTube, and Twitter. If you're listening to Carving It Up podcast, we appreciate that. You are listening on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Anchor, as well as wherever you listen to your podcast. The episodes are uploaded at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific after the live stream. So be sure to check out the podcast if you miss any of the topics. Be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Carving It Up with Bryson Carver. So with that, hope everybody has a great night. Please continue to stay safe. God bless you all.